what is the funnel that a typical brand should take in the Web3 space from going from a niche, perhaps gaming NFT collection with 10,000 users, 10,000 customers, to something with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of customers?
If you track projects that are successful, consistent, think about Parallel, think about YGG, think about INX. What do they have in common? Out of the licensees, there's one that is a permanent licensee, and that's the Pixelmon company.
So for you, how do you hold that sense of culture internally as you are growing? An active commitment to turning Gavin from what it was to an actual mascot, or did this happen organically and naturally through the community?
I think a lot of the mistakes we've seen wouldn't have happened.
But hey, Giulio, you're the founder, the co-founder of LiquidX Studios, the company that ended up acquiring Pixelmon back in 2022. You were arguably one of the best and most successful comeback stories that Web3 has ever seen so far. And just recently, you've raised over $7 million on your token generation event with the Mon token presale, making your total builder war chest for the Mon protocol, your token, reach almost 15 millions. My question to you, Giulio, is now that this is behind you, how do you feel? How was the rollout of the TGE event?
So I think to be transparent, the community presale, which is the event you were referencing, I wouldn't say it was the easiest, but it was a very comfortable, if you want, step in the journey. Because look, it was a community presale. It was within our community. This was with the people that I've been talking to daily for 2 years. Nearly 2 years. So ultimately, this was an event where I wouldn't say we were confident, because I really didn't believe it. When in 8 minutes we raised 8 million. So I was positively surprised. But it was an event where we were playing amongst our team, our friends. And those essentially 50,000 Discord members, those 20,000 NFT holders across the collections. What is happening now is instead, it's the next step, which is in between community sale and actual listing setup. And the actual listing setup, you're not playing with friends, not because the exchanges aren't nice, but because, let's be honest, they're not supposed to be your friends.
Precisely.
So the step that we are in now is, I think, the hard part of the journey. It is the grinding part. It is where we are effectively now working out the final details of where will Mon list on what day, in what formats, with what distribution across possible multiple exchanges, if they are multiple, with what support partners, with what marketing flow, part of which essentially done in partnership with the exchanges, part of it directly from us. So I'd say now the grind feels a lot less. We're not in friendly territory.
Right.
But yeah, we know we have that community behind us, which I think is the core strength. We've got the diamond handlers of Web3, the ones that went through the Pixelmon bad days and back strongly into the good days. And yeah, we know we have them behind us.
You open up an interesting thread, Giulio, which is how the community facilitated in the success of that $8 million in 8 minutes. And something I think about a lot is, what is the funnel and the acquisition funnel that a typical brand should take in the Web3 space from going from a niche, perhaps gaming NFT collection with 10,000 users, 10,000 customers, to something with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of customers. Would you say for you, having started with a smaller, nicher, higher quality NFT community, facilitated that next step on the ladder, which was the token? And then how do you foresee that new hundreds of thousands of people who have in on the Mon ecosystem, how would you see that serving as another stepping stone to the next chapter of what Pixelmon aim to become?
Yeah, good question. So I think that right now the best way to go to market, particularly for IP related projects, whether it's games, anime, comic, whatever, but projects in that ecosystem is through a NFT community. The reason that I believe this is that because I believe you need to create niche, hyper excited communities that find a strong symbol to attach themselves to, and basically come together, so attach to each other, and then leapfrog from that to bigger and bigger groups of people. Now, so effectively, if you are a gaming project, you are probably going to be navigating what is the typical tech, and it's true for tech 2.0, Web 2 and whatnot, customer acquisition curve, which is not supposed to be, bam, 1 million users. It's supposed to be a snowball effect where you keep acquiring users and your first batch is profitable enough for you to be able to invest in acquiring your second batch, etc., etc. So I think that the user acquisition journey, so the actual players, is a very long process, and a process that effectively is going to be your day-to-day commercial process as a brand and as a product for the rest of your lifespan. So the place to start is instead, how can you have an immediate niche high quality group? And NFTs do that, because NFT mints and the immediate trading after it positions your community very fast into having that closed group that has that connection of the NFT holding, that gives you your base. And those people very quickly get very interested. Very quickly, if you do the right thing, become promoters. Within that group, my only suggestion to other founders is, I've seen a lot of projects launch an NFT, and I'm not going to make names, but they launch an NFT collection, and then their expectation is, okay, the NFT collection is out, now I'm going to work on the game, see you again when the game is ready. And yeah, of course, there's some mods that speak to the community, there's a couple of trailers dropped here and there, but the community is kind of left to it. I think at that point, if you do it that way, there's no point in having an NFT collection. Because if you're not involving that hyper engaged early fan base in the process, if you're not letting them in and then letting them carry you, then effectively you're just ticking boxes because you heard it was the right thing to launch an NFT first and then do from NFT airdrop to token and whatnot. But you're not really leveraging what it means. You need to build with the hyper engaged NFT community, which then allows you, so open up to them, develop transparently, focus groups, tester groups, questions to the CEO, questions to the team. That then allows them to be what brings you the next 10,000. So then really those people, back to your question, then really those, whether it's 5,000, 10,000, they will then be the conduit by which you go crypto. So you're going to expand your funnel because it is a much bigger funnel. Yeah, the crypto interest, the token interest is probably 10 to 20x, if not more, the NFT interest. For many reasons. One is when you do tokens, you will have tokens in cents. So there'll be a much lower priced entry price point, much simpler ecosystem. NFTs sometimes are hard to understand. Much more liquid, so people see less risk in it. And at the same time, you'll also have a much higher value user base because there'll be Bitcoin maxis, there'll be ETH maxis, but there'll be actually institutional funds with crypto trading accounts. So you leapfrog from the NFT base to that wider base, and then you use all of that to have stronger momentum than any Web 2 brand would have in organically acquiring Web 2 users as a game.
On that point, Giulio, oftentimes after a project launches, they are left with a liability. That liability being called a community. that does not generate revenue and costs to maintain. And that is why a lot of founders opt to go back, build in silence, reduce their cost of maintaining that machine that they've built, and come back when they have a finished product. For you, and this is where I feel as an ecosystem, as an industry, we are still trying to find ourselves. What does the business model of an NFT project, of a conglomeration of people that are brought together through the power of digital identities, what is the business model behind that? And you mentioned turning this community into an asset that is going to assist you in the game development process. How does that look like for you, and how can other brands perhaps replicate that process?
So maybe let's differentiate now. There's projects that launched pre-blur change of royalties, and there's projects that launched after. I do not necessarily agree with the outcome, but I do understand founders that come and say, well, I launched and I created a machine based on the assumption that I would have an income from royalties. Because when I launched, there were royalties. I understand where they're coming from. I understand that they might need to course correct certain things. I understand that they might try and bring us back into a royalty ecosystem, whether they do that with Magic Eden support or other ways. But let's maybe not spend too much time on those cases, because let's be also honest, there's 5, 6, 10 of those collections are still alive.
Yeah.
Because and let's maybe focus on who launched post that. Now, my question is, if you launched those NFTs thinking that as free NFTs, then why did you do it if you weren't already planning to build with the community? And if you launched it as a paid mint, honestly, I think maybe you took advantage of the space, but you didn't really understand what the space was about. Because the space is about building with communities. I'm a strong believer in this, particularly the gaming IP building space. I mean, you're building fandoms. You're not fandoms starting with an investment, which is, I think, the big and fantastic innovation. Fandoms that owns a piece of their project. That's the fantastic innovation. But if you're not going to treat them as fandoms, if you're going to treat them like customers, because that's what you treat them as if you just drop the product on them after, then I think you might have misunderstood the space. Either they will punish you for it, or they will ignore you for it. But yeah. So my point of view is, if you're looking to launch an NFT collection, you need to understand what you're doing. You are letting the fandom in, whether you do it paid or unpaid. And you're letting the fandom own a piece of it. And you got involvement. And our point of view in involving them was, Discord is frankly a fantastic product. So our point of view in involving them was, use that fantastic product called Discord, create a ranking system in your Discord. So that ranking system can be IP advisors, game testers, or it can be how many NFTs they hold. But effectively start segmenting your community.
Interesting.
First of all. Second, create an open communication channel. Look, guys, it doesn't take that long, 15 minutes a day, to answer 3 questions. You don't need to set up AMAs on Twitter. You don't need to set up hours. 15 minutes. It can be doing while you have your coffee in the morning. Because you've got to, first of all, see them as allies and not opponents. That itself is... a lot of founders approach the community thinking, what do they want to hear? I approach the community as, what do I want to learn from them today? So, and I'm constantly transparent on what I don't know. If you go and look at my answers, you'll see half the time I say, we don't know yet about this. And that's very untraditional if you think about the NFT space, where most founders are behave like they're gods on earth. But when I say I don't know is because I want to see what they're going to then do in the common channel when they start chatting about how could Giulio do this. So create those 15 minutes. Over time, you will start it'll be a process. It'll be like when you get to know a person, you will understand and start seeing patterns. Second, create with your mod team subgroups. So who wants to give advice on art? Who wants to give advice on gaming? Who wants to give advice on this and that, on tokenomics? If needed, make them sign an NDA. I have groups of dozens of people that I've created sub-channels and they signed NDAs. And I said, if you don't sign an NDA, you're not welcome here.
Interesting.
Because this channel is about tokenomics. And so you need to sign an NDA. I have groups that are completely transparent. I have groups that have seen trailers that will not be issued for yet 2-3 months from now. And we take feedback from them. And we also monitor that if somebody doesn't give feedback in that channel for months in a row, not for problems, but we push that person out, bring somebody else in, run surveys. Depends on the project really, but I really find the focus group, the tokenomics group, the art group, which often are in the same subgroups, and the tester groups to be very, very valuable. And I find that the 15 minutes a day I dedicate to answering the CEO questions is not actually a community service, it's me keeping a pulse. And if you keep a pulse, you'll make less mistakes. But yeah, back to us. Don't launch an NFT collection if you don't plan on doing this. This is not Kickstarter. You're not selling them early access on Steam.
Right.
You're doing a lot more than that. You are bringing a fan in.
Right.
Yeah.
Very nice. I like the angle of creating a focus group out of your community. But if we are to backtrack, now that we understand how is it that one can create value and relationship with your community, continue nurturing the people in your ecosystem. If we are to take a step back, one level deeper, with Pixelmon specifically, one thing that stood out about what is it that you were able to achieve, Giulio, is you were able to masterfully execute one of the best resuscitation events that Web3 has ever seen. You took a community that was, how would you say that? That was a turbulent start. A disappointed, turbulent start of the project Pixelmon, and you were able to turn that around into one of the more notable projects in the NFT space. And we've seen this again and again. Oftentimes, an acquisition or takeover of a community, the default outcome is always a slow grind to zero. But you guys were able to get the opposite outcome. What would you say led to the successful cleanup job that was Pixelmon? What was the hardest part about this? And what were the things you did that allowed you to execute this so masterfully?
So I don't think there is any secret in how we took over, as much as the method by which we executed. So I think effectively, whether you're doing it in a takeover or you're doing it as the founder of the collection, ultimately, I always believe, and if you track projects that are successful consistently without being flashy about it. So think about Parallel. Think about YGG as a community. Think about Ronin. Think about INX. What do they have in common? They are constantly shipping. Whether it's a partnership announcement, whether it's an art piece, whether it's an event, or a full tech takeover. They're constantly shipping. They're doing what companies do. So when we came in, I said we need to do what companies do. Just be very open about it. So we need to constantly give incremental proof of work and an advancement. And there can't be a single week in which there's no evidence of us having worked and advanced. And to be frank, that is what good companies do. So we just did that, and we did that maybe being more open. So we even showed the half finished. Here's the half finished art. Here's the 2D art. Here's the 3D mock-up. Here's the 3D first finish. But we just did it. If you track when we launched Mon Protocol 2 months ago, we just took the same approach. If you go on the Mon Protocol page, you'll see that not every week, but 3 times a week there's something. And it's not because we're just trying to make noise. It is because that's how you build companies. Constant, incremental focus, so that today you're more advanced than yesterday. And when we as human beings, and in companies, I've seen this many times, we always overestimate what a company can achieve in 1 year. But most of us underestimate what can be done in 10.
Yes, very nice.
And maybe in Web3 in 2.5. Yeah. Right. Really, I take what Pixelmon was 18 months ago. It was a pile of ashes. With the only asset in there that you could have spoken of was Gavin. And now you have 1.5 million followers across channels, multiple protocols, an engaged community, market cap of 150 million across collections, the best monster art in the scene, partners that just get piled over every other day. But it wasn't done in big bangs. It wasn't done with every 6 months a massive marketing campaign. No, absolutely. It was done every 2 days. 150 times a year.
Interesting. So then my next question becomes, Giulio, because clearly this is not your first rodeo at business. You have experience, you've done this before. What would you say is the skill stack of bricks that you've laid with experience that has allowed you to do this, to achieve the results you have? What would you say are the skills that other founders need to learn to become a founder like yourself, Giulio?
So I think ultimately the answer to this question is very funding access dependent, meaning if you as a founder, you're very young and you don't have access to a lot of funding, there's a different answer, meaning the scrappy approach. I respect it a lot. I've done it in my first ventures twice, but it might be a different answer. But for now, I'm going to give you an answer for the founder that has 7 digits, so has $1 million USD and above. And that answer is the key skill sets and things you need to focus on are recruiting, enablement of the people you recruited. So give them targets and make sure that they don't have obstacles ahead of them that they can't deal with to achieve what the targets were you gave them. So no blockers. Financial management, cash flow management. Just keep the company alive. Manage the cash flow. 4, which is very connected to the targets, have a vision and communicate it. And then communicate it first, break it down in the targets for each person. Make sure each person, sorry, I've done this, but make sure you have the right people. Make sure you tell them what your vision is. Break it down so that each of them knows what they need to do in the next 3 months, not 1 year, next 3 months, and each 3 months it changes, to get closer to that vision. This third point is what most young leaders fail at, by the way.
The vision.
Breaking down the big vision into achievable objectives for each person in the organization in a way that also each one of them knows what they are supposed to do. So you see so many organizations where they've got big dreams, but they're just stepping over each other's toes, or everybody thinks that something is going to get done by someone else, and then nobody does it.
Fascinating.
And 4, keep the company alive while they do it.
So cash flow management.
Cash flow management. So I think these 4 things are enough, frankly, to get you going. The other thing that I then learned over the years, these are softer skills. You're not going to come by them right away, and I don't know if I'm good enough at them yet. But founders need to have. You need to be a paranoid, and by paranoid I mean in a few ways. You need to always assume something's going wrong that you don't know about. So that's one thing. You need to always assume it's the same thing, but there's a threat that you're not aware of. And you need to translate that in a maniac sense of urgency for things. Because nobody is going to drive a sense of urgency across your organization but you. Yeah. So everybody else has a added incentive to neglect the problem, ignore the problem. You're the only one that has to always pull the problem up and have a massive sense of urgency inculcated in everybody. So some call it the push factor, but you need to bring that to the table. The job of everything is okay, and people should be happy, and employee satisfaction should be super high. That's the job of managers, not of founders. Yeah. The job of founders is avoiding the issues and keeping the organization working hard, and by consequence of that, managers can create a happy organization because the organization is alive and thriving. Yeah.
Someone I've studied a lot, Giulio, is Napoleon, one of the history's best generals, but also one of history's best leaders. And what you say, a lot of it comes down to leadership, the ability to put together the right people and have them all move towards the same direction. Something that with Napoleon, what he was very good at is he knew exactly when to lead through fear or when to lead through purpose. And as a leader, I feel like you need the two at different moments. One that creates urgency, the other one that creates that fortifies the long-term vision. For you, Giulio, which would you say you lean more towards?
I think in business in general, you should 99% lead via purpose rather than fear. And the reason for this is that it's a bit different from an army or a country. If you're hiring good people, you should assume they can get another job very fast. Leadership through fear, and fear is maybe a strong word, but leadership through imposition, essentially. Why is it very much used, for example, in blue-collar workforces, and why we need unions to actually protect them from that? Because those groups don't easily find another job. Those groups, because of the way their compensation works, don't necessarily have a cushion to sustain themselves in between jobs. But you have to assume that, especially when you're leading a tech organization and a high average skill set team, you have to assume that the employee that is not purpose driven can tell you to fuck off.
Okay, interesting.
So then you have to drive them through purpose, and maybe the only fear you can ever leverage is the fear that the purpose may be threatened. So the only fear you can ever leverage is, let's fight because we don't want Pixelmon to fail, because our purpose is for Pixelmon to win. But you can't drive them through, let's fight because if not, you won't be part of Pixelmon.
Okay.
So I always believe that if you have to tell somebody they're going to get fired if they don't do the job, you probably should have already fired them.
Interesting. Okay.
So Yeah, because if they react to that by being motivated, it's probably because they don't have other alternatives. And
Interesting.
yeah,
How big is your team,
yeah.
Giulio?
We are over 80 people now.
Over 80 people.
We've probably grown a bit too fast to be transparent. But yeah, there's a lot going on between anime, games, community management, and now Mon Protocol.
How do you maintain culture when your team grows that quickly, Giulio? The reason I ask is also personal. At Unfungible, we've grown 3x in the last 4 months. And it is the first time I find myself all of a sudden managing a team of 12 people, which is not close to 80 people, but there's levels to this game. So for you, how do you hold that sense of culture internally as you are growing quickly?
To be honest, it's very hard. I think it would be nearly utopic to think you can actually hold culture. So maybe the actual answer is you need to just accept that there's like, if you plotted on a line speed of hiring and depth of cultural adoption, you probably have, every time there is a hiring acceleration, there is a dip in cultural adoption and understanding. So first of all, you need to accept it. Second, I don't really believe that you should change the way you operate. You should just maintain constant processes that bring people together on their objectives, and accept that there will be moments when you are lagging and moments when you're catching up. So, and the processes that we build in place, good old-fashioned town halls, active, keep certain channels on Slack or Discord, whatever you're using for your team management, relatively active. If you have a physical team, take them for a drink every now and again. Make sure your managers, if you have bigger teams, make sure there's a one-on-one system. So managers are doing one-on-ones. I think one of the things that is new, but I insist every employee spend some time on the Discord group, because I think we have this actually very useful, constant bucket of culture emission, which is Discord. And even in a disconnected team, if you spend time in there, you're going to get a lot of exposure and history. But again, so there's teams that will tell you, oh, you need to do a lot to get your culture up to speed. I think, very bluntly, only if you've got an established company, an established monopoly, you can truly afford to do that. Startups, and this might be a radical statement, but startups can't afford culture workshops. It's bullshit. Culture should be formed organically in startups. And when you think you have an engine that just is going by itself, sit down and throw the ball at each other and fall backwards and have somebody catch you. But I'm talking about the team building workshops and stuff. But that stuff is, that stuff's for oil and gas.
Oil and gas.
You know? Let the culture happen organically, maintain your processes, and accept that when you're growing fast, you're going to have a lag and it's going to catch up. But keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing your core business. Your culture is going to miss. Your main driver of culture propagation is just keep doing what you're out there to do.
Interesting. Keep shipping.
Don't become, I'm out there to get my culture out there. You're not out there for that. You're out there for your mission, and keep going for your mission. And if you pull your team with you, they'll pick up the culture and they'll form a culture. The book is, what is it called? You Are What You Do. The culture book that puts that very nicely, I think. Okay. Interesting. Talking about culture, Giulio, at the core of every company, at the core of every business is a story we tell ourselves and the symbols that come with it. One of the symbols of Pixelmon is a very lovable character called Gavin, who once the most notorious rugger in the NFT space, now turned into someone people buy as a plush to give to their kids. Imagine the stark difference.
I actually have myself a Kevin t-shirt that I got at NFT Paris, and I absolutely love wearing it, especially at the gym. And I know no one knows the reference, but I absolutely love rocking it. My question, Giulio, was there an active commitment to turning Kevin from the what it was to an actual mascot, or did this happen organically and naturally through the community?
It happened organically. So I think there was a focus group that said we shouldn't make Kevin because he's so great. And I looked at it, thought about it, and then I said, yeah, that's cheaper, literally in the speed of the moment.
Wow.
Because remaking the art is going to cost me X. Cool. And I just moved forward. And going backwards, that decision, which came from the focus group.
Wow, interesting.
I just reacted to it.
Fascinating.
Was probably created the biggest organic marketing engine in Web3.
Yes.
So then from there, there was another push, which was let's not give Kevin evolutions because they'll just dilute him. And I disagreed. So I called a vote. When I disagree, by the way, on IP decisions, we vote. I don't decide. We called a vote, and the vote said don't evolve. And I think that helped. And then we started seeing stuff pop up. So we started seeing somebody with, I think it was you that had a Kevin t-shirt while you were doing your exercises.
Yes.
A lady that is another founder in the US with a denim jacket. This jewelry store in Hong Kong coming up with the Kevin pendant. And we just said, and this was, some of these things happened later, but at the time I was looking, we were getting close to our first time we would have an offline event, really putting ourselves out there after the launch. And that was Token 2049, 2023.
Singapore.
In Singapore. And it was May when we booked that booth. So it was May 2023, a year ago nearly. And we were brainstorming around the table, how do we get enough attention to our booth? Because, for us, it's a big expense having a booth at 2049, blah, 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 blah. And then the answer was, let's just put Kevin. And then because we were a bit silly, we didn't think about a mascot.
Yeah.
We thought about a statue. So we made a real, we had a factory in China make a real life statue of Kevin and planted it there. And I was at Token 2049 and just staring. Look, people were coming. There was, I think, OKX stand just across from ours, and people were just coming straight to our stand and taking a selfie with Kevin. Then we were turning around, oh, there's video games there, and then they were trying the video games. And just that for me was like, okay, how do I get this statue to go everywhere? And then a few months later, there was the YGG event in the Philippines, 2 months later. And I was, okay, we need to put the statue on a ship. And then my e-commerce background kicks in, and I say, wait a second. I used to remember that it takes 3 months to get anything through Filipino customs. Well, unless you know someone. And that's when we realized we were never going to get the statue through customs in time. And so, what do we do? What do we do? And I remember we were on a chat group, and there was also Gabby from YGG and some of the other guys. And they were like, we know some guys here in the Philippines that make mascot costumes. And I'm like, ooh, that's genius. Why didn't I think of that in the first place? Bloody statue moving it around 250 kgs. So just from there, Filipino Kevin, which is what we call our mascot costume, was born, which was the mascot making team in Manila who made the mascot costume. And now this mascot, and it was so successful there that now it's traveling the world. Right now it's at GDC. It's going to New York NFT. It's going to ETHSO. After that, it's going to Dubai. So
hilarious.
Kevin has an event every week. I think we're trying to get him tickets to a Taylor Swift concert too. Yeah.
That's so funny. I met him in Paris. It was so funny. No, that's great, man. That's absolutely fascinating. You mentioned the IP part of things, how everything goes through a vote. And what's interesting about the angle you took is, unlike a lot of NFT projects, there's I believe 120, 130 unique IP pieces in the Pixelmon ecosystem. And all the holders of the NFT actually vote for where that IP ends up being used. Why did you decide to take that angle, Giulio? And how do you see this as a model that is more sustainable, economical, and profitable long term to build a business empire than the traditional IP model where I own my NFT, I do whatever the hell I want with it.
Yeah. So, first of all, just to clarify, everything you said is correct. The only exception is out of the licensees, there's one that is a permanent licensee, and that's the Pixelmon company, which doesn't need to ask authorization, but still needs to pay royalties. It's third-party licensees that require approval plus royalties. We only pay royalties. Now, the angle of why we did this. So I did this because I was and still am a big believer that the entire licensing framework in the world is just friction to development and should move faster. So and this is more going to my philosophy, one of the biggest things that got me close to Web3 other than currencies was all the licensing flows and approvals of the world should run on this.
Interesting.
If I want to license the image of Pikachu, it's just so much easier to do it on chain.
Right.
Both approval, tracking, and payment. Just think about music rights. Why aren't music rights being tracked on chain? It's also untransparent. Every radio station should just go there, click, okay, I'm using it, ping to the chain. Then that creates royalties. It would be so easy. So music, TV, everything should run on that. I think it will one day. But so one is I came from that belief that it just works better. And the second one is our belief in fandoms and our belief that if you go to specifically consumer IPs, they're often ruined by bad licensing decisions.
Okay.
I mean, look at what they did to The Witcher with the latest stuff. But look at what they did with some of the mistakes we've seen in consumer IPs, just taking a grand slam because it was licensed to the wrong team. I think that if it wasn't economic actors, so CEOs and people with a KPI to just get as much licensing out of things as possible, but fandoms that had a say in that process, I think a lot of the mistakes we've seen wouldn't have happened.
Okay.
Look at what happened. There was this I'm a Sonic the Hedgehog fan.
Okay. Beautiful.
Do you remember the story of the first Sonic the... And by the way, the guys writing about the Pixelmon anime, they were the writers in Sonic the Hedgehog Prime TV series. But do you remember the whole story surrounding the first Sonic the Hedgehog 3D movie? I think now we're at the third one, but there was a massive case where and I loved, by the way, what Sega did when they accepted that feedback. When the trailer was released, there was an uproar because of the design of the face of Sonic. And this was a fandom uproar. Sega stopped everything and literally redid the entire rendering. So redid the character and then redid the entire rendering. Imagine, when you do a 3D movie, the facial expressions of the key character is probably 50% of the work. They redid the entire rendering of the entire movie on a new face. And they did it because the fandom asked it. And right now, if you look, with the exception of the latest Mario, it's one of the most successful use cases of transitioning from gaming to movie. I want to enable that at scale with legal protection to the fandom to make sure our products stay true to their original IP forever. So, long story short, I think it's a better economic model. So just licensing flows work better that way. And second, I think the best protectors of the IP are the early fans that bought in more than the management team behind the IP later on.
This does open up the question, though, of a hostile takeover. Imagine if this was applied to a larger, broader, more important stakes than a video game producer company like Pixelmon. Well, imagine, for example, I wanted entire control over the Kevin IP. With enough money, I can come in and buy what's on the secondary market or over-the-counter deals with all the Kevin owners. Do you foresee that as a problem? And does anyone have veto power? For example, like does Pixelmon have veto power over these?
We haven't retained veto power, but we have retained permanent permanent rights on ourselves. So now imagine if you were to try and go and buy up the Kevin IP, like truly corner a character. You would still be faced with one other powerful company that, by the way, if it was worth it for you to do that, it means we are very powerful. So there's a connection there. And you'd be faced with one other very powerful company, not because we're powerful right now, I'm not making the arrogant statement, but because if you had enough incentive to corner that market, it means we are powerful. So having a permanent licensee right in place and a stronger tie to the base community than you. So now let's brainstorm this. If what you're doing is good for the IP, you are going to have very solid partners, and ultimately I will nearly be like, it's a good thing. You know what, he cornered it, fine, it's a good thing. Let's say Disney decides to go and do this, fine. I still have it. I think they will have to spend an insane amount of money to do it, but I think there's worse things that can happen to an IP.
Right.
And they might break the ethos because it's not community-led anymore, but because they bought it all up. But you know what? The community decided to sell.
Yes.
So it's still community-led because the termination decision is with the community by selling. So, and instead, if you're planning to do something bad with it, where's your economic incentive?
Yeah.
Because the community will not get behind you. I will not get behind you. So yeah, what are you going to do? A kamikaze attack?
After buying it for millions of dollars.
Yeah, correct. So what are you're buying it to destroy it? Well, you can't, because it's just going to be that bad actor that everybody will laugh off. So yeah.
Makes sense. Listen, Giulio.
But yes, you need to accept that you're letting go of control.
Yeah.
Versus the normal IP framework where it's very controlled.
It's again, it's the pendulum swinging to the other side. Giulio, do you have any closing thoughts for some of the founders that are listening to you? If you had one thing that you would tell founders today, what would that be?
I just say, I think two concepts. You can build in Web3 two ways. By building a community first, or by just building a product first. If you choose to build a community, you need to involve them in building the product. If not, it's not a community. And I think you're just getting it wrong. And it's something that, by the way, a lot of guys that come from Web2 do. We've seen it with some of the latest NFT launches. The second thought that I give out there is, I think this space is done with Black Swan events. It's done with rug pullers. It's done with people wanting to make money fast, founder level at least. The speculators still do, and they have a role to play. So this industry is going to call you out, and they're going to punish you, both from a public image and potentially legal standpoint too. So if you come here, come to build. And building is about delivering every day consistently a little bit. It's not about big flashy parties or big flashy one-off things. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, and then we will welcome with open arms because we need more builders.
I love that. Giulio, I appreciate you, man. You definitely make the space a better place. Every space you go to, literally, like literal spaces, always nuggets of wisdom, nuggets of value. I appreciate you sharing time today with me, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Leon. Always a pleasure chatting.
I appreciate that. We're beautiful.